Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. If you saw my previous video, okay, where I went over mblocks, basically again the idea is about these two libraries to create a front-end UI libraries that don't use a web component API, that don't use Babel, don't use JSX, they don't need Webpack, they don't need any external tooling. You can literally just slap them in a script tag. It should work in all browsers because I'm not using any kind of newer APIs. It's just JavaScript. So yet still can act and feel like working with something like React. So it has props, has state, lifecycle functions, the whole deal. Okay, so I went over mblocks in the last video, which is a class-based one. And I did make the fix that I mentioned in that video where I made it where you can actually, where state and props is passed into the assemble function by default. Two, I also added lifecycle functions. So that's all been added. It's all in the documentation for mblocks. I've also done the same for superFunc, but you'll actually see me do that, go through that in this video where we'll use it. So if I click on superFunc, let's go to the GitHub. I accidentally transposed the links. Here you go. All you need is the script tag. Okay, you put that in your file. I already have one ready to go. So here in my index.html, here I have the script tag for sfunc. You might be hearing my bird in the background because I have a cockatiel. And cockatiels make sounds. Okay. And basically the way this works, let me get rid of this H1 here, is that instead of having custom like elements, custom tags, it just works based on IDs. So it's kind of like going back to like old Angular JS days where it's a lot of it's done through custom attributes versus custom elements. So essentially what you do is you just create your targets by giving them a unique sfunc property. And that's how this will work. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this hello. That's all I want. Okay. And let me go to the app.js. Let me just close out a lot of these other windows. Okay. Boop. Okay, and then here we have our app.js. I'm going to get rid of all this code because we're going to redo all of it. Okay. Wait, no, this is the wrong app.js. Don't want to delete that one. I want this app.js. So actually, let me make sure this is the right index.html. Nope, it was not. So I'm going to close this one. Here's the one with the script tag, which is right here with the sfunc. Same idea again. That was just my test index.html that I had open a second ago. So I'm going to get rid of all this extra stuff so we can start from scratch. So all I want is that original div. Okay, that original div with the app keyword. And here we go. App.js. And essentially this is like how you create a component. It's really simple. So I create a variable that I'm going to store. And the reason why I want to, basically what you're doing is you're creating a component, you define it, and then it gives you a creator function that you can use to create instances of that component. So I run the superFunc function, and then I pass it a config object. So here, the only thing you have to pass in is a builder property, which is just a function. Okay, actually let me pass that as a arrow function so that looks a bit cleaner. Okay, and the builder function gets passed state, which is state as you know it. Props again is just the attributes, and this time it's grabbing the attributes of this div. Okay, so it's going to be grabbing the attributes of the target element. And then globals. Globals is a object that gets created when you first create the object that you can use to pass around information for that instance, for that component. Cool. Cool. So basically, yeah. So globals. Oh, no, I'm looking at the wrong file here. Let me just close some of these extra files. Okay, so globals is just basically again a object that allows you to pass data between the different functions. Because I'm not using classes. That's like the thing about this library. So I'm creating this object that you can use to that always gets passed into all the functions that happen within this closure. So you just always want to make sure your functions are state props global. And that globals is actually where set state will be in during any of these functions you define inside the superfunc. So if you need to use set state in your mount or anything like that, you would use the globals.setState to make it work. So essentially what I'm doing here is save. I'm gonna do state.hello. Another property I need to pass in is the initial state in that case. So state is going to be an object with a property called hello, and which is going to start out as hello world. I just should remove this from here. Save. And that's it. That's all I need to do to create a component. So basically just need to define this builder function that returns a template string, and that's basically what will render at your target. And then state, which is your initial state for the component. So there we go. And now I have app, and I can use app to create any instances I want. So what I do is if I render app, so if I run app and pass in an ID, it's going to look for an element with that ID, app. Okay, and then target that element with that ID and render it there. Okay, it's going to just render it there. And then what it does, it returns my setState function. So now I have an external setState function for that particular instance that I can use anywhere I want to trigger re-renders and change data and whatnot, not just within the component. So save. Now if I hit refresh, there you go. You get hello world. And see, it's pulling it from state. The cool thing is that now that I have the set app state as an external variable, I can now use it as an onClick function. So I can be like button click me /button. We do an onClick event and onClick equals set app state, and then the new state will just be an object with the new property called hello. It's hello, but it's now called goodbye world. Okay, save. Okay. Now if I refresh, now I have this button. When I click here, it changes the state and re-renders the component. So it works. See, I have reactive state. Very nice. Okay, and it just updates my component. And again, if I wanted to use props, I could use props. So let's just try that out. So if I wanted to do state hello, and then next to it we'll say hello, that's gonna be hello world. And what I'll do is I'll do a space, and we'll do props dot today or a thing. Save. I'll add a prop to this here because this is the target div, the div with the sfunc property of app. And I will add thing equals cheese. Okay, save. And I re-render. Hello world cheese. Then I click on this and it updates and it's now goodbye world cheese. So it works. Okay, so that's it. You can create like a really easily reactive component just like that. And see, that's not much syntax at all. Like that was pretty easily created. Now where things get a little complicated is when I want to have components within a component. So let's see here. Let's say I want to const child. I'm gonna use sort of the same way I did it before. Const child superfunc. Okay, and this builder, just keep it real simple. Builder is just returning h2 cheese. Actually, we'll use a different word. Gouda /h2. Okay, so that's just there. So that just is going to return an h2 with Gouda, and that component doesn't need state. I'll still pass it an initial state. Config. No, what am I doing? State. Just an empty object. Save. Oh yeah, this needs to be wrapped in an object. There we go. So that component is created. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I need to define this X before this. Because since I'm using arrow functions, they're not going to be hoisted. Okay. So the next thing I need to do is now I'm going to instead here include another line. And in there, we're going to have a div with an sfunc. Sfunc child. Okay. Sfunc child and div / div. Cool. So essentially what happens is that first the template renders, but I need to actually, like, this doesn't actually do anything automatically. I need to, like, invoke, like, build it, which is built when you run the actual creator function. Okay, I have the creator function child, but I need to actually use it. So what there is there's an assemble function. Okay, the assemble function includes state props target globals. Okay, state is just state and props. Target is actually the element that this is targeting, so this technically this div here. Okay, and globals is your object with global data. So again, you can just store stuff in globals if I needed to. So as an example, what I'll do is before the return value, I will just do like globals dot cheese equals Munster, and then what I'll do is over here is I will console.log globals.cheese. So you see that it like technically keeps data available. Build is always like the first thing that runs out of all the functions. Okay, so basically the way it should always run is always builder then assemble. The first time the component is rendered, it's builder assemble then mount, which is another thing you can define. And then every time afterwards it re-renders, it's builder assemble then update. So you have lifecycle functions. Globals.cheese. So we're going to console log that. And then again, I want to make sure that child component gets rendered. So then I just add here child. Okay. So this way, this triggers the rendering of the component here. And that's going to automatically happen every time. So again, my assemble function is just there that kind of handle assembly. So instead of just naming my component, I have to make sure that I assemble any custom components in my assemble function. That's sort of the trade-off of, again, not having any of those extra APIs and libraries in there. They keep it like sort of pure JavaScript, plain old JavaScript. But still, once it's built out, it's still pretty convenient. It's still pretty self-contained. So now if I refresh, okay, so we see hello world cheese. Hello world cheese. And let me just think about that. Div child. And these. Well, take a look at the console. Assemble did not run. Let me read the documentation. That would probably be useful. Assemble state props target globals. Okay. But make sure that I actually ran the assemble function in the library. So let's see here. Const state target inner HTML builder. No, I didn't. Ooh. That would explain why. So 1 second, let me fix that and get it uploaded. Okie dokie. So I fixed the library, updated it. So it should be all reflected in npm and on GitHub and all that stuff. So that's all good. So now when we see this, it should work now. Cannot read property attributes of no. JS8. Okay, so that wasn't a library issue. That's because I have a typo right here. Okay, so there we go. So I wasn't able to find the ID with the property of child. So let's refresh. And there we go. So now it's working. Okay. Still complaining about something else, but it worked. So, cool. Okay, line 27. I'll play with that later, but basically it's working. Basically every time now if I click this, she's not defined, HTML button. Okay, so basically just stop there. Okay, so that's been fixed. What happened was I forgot to put a ternary operator on the assemble function. So for example, in this child component where I didn't define an assemble function, it was running an error because there was no assemble function defined. So I added the ternary operator. So now everything for the exception of builder will run only if it exists. Okay, so that's fixed. So now if we go back over here, I hit refresh, I click, and it works. Haha. And then you have other functions that you can define, such as mount. Okay, mount is just basically something that runs the first time the function, this component is created. Then there's update that runs every time you re-render. So anytime the set state function is run, it's going to re-render. And again, all these functions, they always take state, props, target, globals. Okay, so you always have access to those 4 properties in any of these functions. And the last function that you can pass in is called hookgen. So if you wanted to generate like hooks, like any kind of extra functions, and you would do that in here in hookgen. So you would just create a function that creates any functions you want using state, props, state, props, state, props, target, globals, and it'll return. And you can have it return an array of functions, a single function. You know, like I could do something like this. I could just do, hey, I want a function that just basically returns state. That's all it does. The only catch with this, though, is that again, state objects are passed by reference. So every time you do a set state, the reference, a new state is created, so it's a reference to a new object, and this is your existing hookgen, or your so basically, let's just to give you an example, if I were to go over here, and then basically what happens is that the creator function returns an array with first includes always your set state function, and then the second element is always whatever your hookgen function returns is the second thing in this array. So in this case, I'm only returning another function, which is what it's going to call getState. And getState will work. I can then use getState to console log the state. Console.log, getState. And this is all fine and good. Okay. And then let's say, yeah, that's fine. So if I hit refresh, getState is not a function. Let's examine. Hookgen return. Oh, I didn't actually define a function. I just wrote state. I want to return a function that returns state. There we go. State. So now when I do this, refresh, see, it prints out the state. But if I were to run, now that the state has changed, this function will still refer to this version of the object that has hello world as a property. So what I did is that anytime you run set state, it will return a new version of getState. So what I could do, I wonder if this would work. Let's try it out. If I just do here in this one, I just do getState equals set state app. Okay, so that way get state gets updated. And save. Oh, actually, let's make it even a little bit more succinct. Well, let's just try it out. Okay, so let's refresh. So there's my console, and just to make sure that we see that it works, get state right now, if I were to run the get state function in the console, see I get back hello world. But then if I hit click me, okay, yeah, I can't oh, it's a constant variable, that's right. So I need to change these to lets. Save. Okay, so let's refresh. Click. So now if I try to do get state, again, see now I get the new state with goodbye world. Okay. But if I hadn't, so let's say I hadn't done this assignment here. Okay, refresh. See, state definitely changed, but when I use get state, it's still going to use the old version of the function, which still refers to this object that's now obsolete, hello world. Okay, just sort of the nature of closures and passing objects by reference. But there is a way to deal with that. But again, that's only if you're using hooks and you're creating your own custom hooks. Otherwise, you never have to deal with it. If you're just creating normal reactive templates, this gets pretty succinct. So again, like, see, like that's a component. And it worked. It was pretty straightforward. Not much typing. So cool. That's how superFunc works. And hopefully you guys found that interesting. Again, I don't expect mblocks or superFunc to necessarily become the mainstream of how front-end UIs are built. I do think web components will become more of a thing, which is why I think Merced UI actually has a space to become something people might want to use. Because, one, it's easy to use, and it takes advantage of those technologies in a nice compact way. But I do think this could be a nice way to get deeper into programming for someone who wants to just do some fun JavaScript stuff in their front-end template building. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.